So, in our last lesson, we talked about Shays' Rebellion and how that's really going to end up being a driving factor towards this new Constitution. So, under the Articles of Confederation, the national government had the power to maintain an army, but they didn't have the power to tax. So, there was no way to fund an army. They were unable to put down a rebellion. So, the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation are really going to come to light there. So the Constitutional Convention is going to be held in Philadelphia in May of 1787, and the sole purpose of this convention is to fix the Articles. Now, 55 delegates from 12 states attended. Rhode Island did not send any delegates. George Washington is the president over the proceedings, so he had been a Revolutionary War hero, was very respected at this time, so he was quickly chosen to preside over the convention. Other delegates are going to include James Madison, so he is a lawyer from Virginia, Alexander Hamilton, who had been the assistant to George Washington during the Revolutionary War, and Benjamin Franklin. He had been part of drafting the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation. He's 81 at this time, so he's very respected. And all of the members of the convention were elite. They had some form of political experience. A lot of them had been part of drafting and signing the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation. Many of them had also served in the Revolutionary War, and they're going to go on to serve in other political capacities or become Supreme Court justices. Now, the two biggest issues to discuss at the convention, one is going to be the representation of states in the national government. So under the Articles of Confederation, every state receives one vote in Congress. So small states are wanting to keep that equality because obviously they're smaller, they don't have such a large population, whereas bigger states with larger population are arguing that they should have more representation in government. So that's going to be one of the major issues to discuss. The other is the powers of the national government. So what should the national government be allowed to do? Remember, under the Articles of Confederation, states retained sovereignty and had most of the power. Now, one thing to note here is that discussions about slavery fell into these topics and not concerns over morality. So at this point at the Constitutional Convention, they're not really discussing whether or not slavery is right or wrong. They're trying to consider how slaves should be factored into population and things of that nature. Now, individual rights. The Founding Fathers under the Constitution are going to create a limited government with distributed powers. And we're going to talk more about the separation of powers and how the government's limited later on, protecting individual freedoms. However, the original Constitution is going to include some protections for individuals. First is going to be a writ of habeas corpus, and this allows people that are being detained by the government to know why they're being held. So the government cannot put you in jail or hold you without telling you why they're doing so. The next is bills of attainder. So this is legislature declaring someone guilty without a trial. So you can't declare someone guilty of a crime without a trial. And then the third one is ex post facto laws, which is punishing people for acts that weren't a crime when the act was committed. So that would be like saying, Miss Collish, you can't wear pink pants after I showed up to school in pink pants. So you can't punish people for something that wasn't a crime when the act was committed. So these were all protections that were included in the initial Constitution. So representation in Congress, remember, that's going to be the big issue at this Constitutional Convention. Small states are fearing not being fairly represented. Big states are going to fear being underrepresented. So small states are wanting to have that equal representation. Big states feel like they have a larger population with more people, so they should have more representation. So there's going to be two plans that are presented at this Constitutional Convention. And the first is going to be the Virginia plan. And you can think of this as the large state plan. It's going to be devised by James Madison. Remember, he's from Virginia. And it's going to create a three-branch government and bicameral legislature. So under the Articles of Confederation, we've got a unicameral legislature. So he's proposing bicameral, which means two houses. Members of the lower house are going to be directly elected by the people, where members of the upper house would consist of representatives nominated by state legislatures and chosen by the lower house. More populous states have more members in both houses. So this is actually going to be kind of the foundation of the Constitution, is what this plan is going to end up being. But the big thing that you need to know here is that it created a 3-branch government and a bicameral legislature. That's the big things to keep in mind about the Virginia plan. It's going to be better for bigger states because more populous states are going to have more members in Congress. The other plan is the New Jersey plan, and you can think of this as the small state plan. It's going to be presented by William Patterson. He's from New Jersey, and it proposes a unicameral legislature where each state would get 1 equal vote. So he's wanting to retain that idea from the Articles of Confederation. Small states are going to see equal representation as essential to their sovereignty. So in order for small states to retain any kind of power or any kind of say in the government, they feel like they have to have that vote. So this is where we're going to stop with this video, and in the next video we'll talk about the Great Compromise and the Constitution that we have today.